I found one morel mushroom this year, and this is how I'm going to try to propagate it. Here's the workstation I used to capture the spores and the tissue for propagation onto agar. I used petri dishes and some jars to inoculate the agar and grow it. So under controlled conditions with the right temperature range, about 60 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Morels have one of the fastest growing mycelium apparently, and I waited a bit long before I actually stopped the process and decided to transfer to grain medium for propagating the spawn. As the most successful mycelium growth, you can see the wispy fibers, and you can see the black sclerotia in this jar. Hi guys, here's the progress on my exploration of trying to grow morel mushroom bed outdoors. I harvested one mushroom this spring in my rose bed, and I was able to transfer tissue transfer and spores to potato dextrose yeast agar, and the spores seem to take okay. I'm not sure about the tissue, but in the agar it looked like sclerotia had developed, black, and here's the results of the growth expansion on grain, and it looks white for the most part, but there's some black bits in there almost like sclerotia in the jar, and it's populated the entire jar well. I made 3 jars of it, and I'm going to spread it in an outdoor bed I prepared. It's actually a window well that I've got here, and I put in a whole bunch of peat moss, and I started spreading some of the grain, the morel spawn, and that's about a 4-inch thick bed of peat moss, and I added some powdered oyster shell to it, and I also added some which is calcium carbonate, and I also added this, which is calcium sulfate, to it as well. It's a food additive. They use it for making tofu, for instance. This you can buy it at Asian markets. Anyhow, that supplement should be good enough to get these morel going, I hope. So I'm going to finish spreading these jars out in this area, and rake it in. I watered it all down, and then just neglect it till next year. Make sure it stays moist. Water collects here in the spring, so it's a perfect spot to wake it up in the spring, and we'll see what happens. Wish me luck. Another note for you regarding the production of morel from agar to transfer to expand the spawn, morel spawn. What I did was I used 1 quart of grain, rye grain. I put 1 quart jar. I put 200 grams of rye and 200 milliliters of water. And to that I add 5 grams of gypsum, which is the calcium sulfate that I showed you earlier. And then morel spawn, I transferred some of the morel mycelium that grew on the agar into the jars. I put these seals on the jars so they can breathe somewhat. After these were put through a pressure cooker for about 30 minutes, and then let it cool down to room temperature, and then you inoculate it with the agar, the mycelium that grew on the agar. And morel mycelium grows really fast, like in 10 days it populated the entire jar. So I was ready to transfer that into this bed here. And this bed here, it's about 2 yards of peat moss. I bought a big bag of peat moss here, and used it was 3.8 liters, so I used about at least 2 liters of it to get 4 inches depth on this bed that's sitting on top of the sand. And then I spread powdered oyster shell, about 4 pounds of that, and I had some left, that's calcium carbonate, and I sprayed also some calcium sulfate as well. So right now I spread all the inoculum, the spawn, Morel spawn. You can see it's very spindly, but you can see that it's grown. The mycelium is white, it's grown on the grain, and it looks pretty healthy actually. So I'm going to rake this in and then give it another watering, and then just leave it till spring and see what happens, what pops up. Who knows? Stay tuned. Okay, here's one last update. I spread about 5-pound bag of, I had some ash, this wood ash, to contribute to the pH and the nutrients for the morel mushroom bed here, because they have a tendency to sprout like mad after a fire. So I thought I'd try to reproduce the conditions. On top of that, inside this window well, I put in odd pieces of chicken wire to prevent squirrels and other varmints from going in there and picking away, because I noticed some activity on they were probably trying to eat some of the mycelium, the grain. So this is to prevent them. Now it's just a matter of benign neglect. I water every once in a while, and then we'll see what pops up next spring. Stay tuned. This is a long experiment.